Most people believe strength is proven by how well they can influence, correct, or dominate others. They measure power by how many people listen to them, obey them, or adjust their behavior to meet their expectations. But that belief is fundamentally flawed. The greatest form of mastery is not external, it is internal. It is not about controlling environments, conversations, or people. It is about governing your own mind, your own emotions, and your own responses. You can command a room and still be a slave to irritation. You can influence thousands and still be controlled by a single negative comment. That is not power. That is dependency disguised as authority. True power begins the moment you no longer need others to behave a certain way for you to remain at peace. The reality is simple. You will never control everyone. People will misunderstand you, disagree with you, disrespect you, and sometimes even provoke you intentionally. If your emotional state is tied to their behavior, then your life will always be unstable. You will constantly rise and fall based on who said what, who did what, and who failed to meet your expectations. That is not living, that is reacting. Self-mastery requires a shift in perspective. Instead of asking, how do I make them change? You begin asking, how do I remain unchanged in the face of this? That question alone separates the emotionally immature from the emotionally powerful. Because when you focus on mastering yourself, you reclaim authority over your inner world. Your emotions are signals, not commands. They are indicators of what is happening within you, but they should never dictate your actions. Anger may rise, frustration may knock at your door, irritation may attempt to take hold, but none of these feelings have the right to control your behavior unless you surrender to them. The disciplined individual understands this. They feel everything, but they are not ruled by anything. They have trained themselves to pause in moments where others would react instantly. And in that pause lies their power. Because when you pause, you create space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you get to choose who you will be. Many people skip that space. They react immediately, speak carelessly, and act impulsively. Later, they regret their words, their tone, their decisions. But by then, the damage is already done. Self-mastery teaches you to value that moment of pause more than the temporary satisfaction of reacting. You must also recognize that trying to control others is often rooted in insecurity. When you feel the need to correct every behavior, challenge every opinion, or respond to every offense, it reveals an internal instability. But when you are grounded, when you are secure in who you are, you do not feel threatened by every external action. You do not feel the need to prove yourself in every situation. There is a calm confidence in the person who has mastered themselves. They do not rush to respond. They do not get easily offended. They do not allow others to pull them into unnecessary conflicts. Not because they are passive, but because they are intentional. Self-mastery also requires emotional responsibility. You must stop blaming others for how you feel. No one can make you angry without your permission. They can trigger something, yes, but the reaction is yours. And once you accept that responsibility, you gain the ability to change it. This is where true freedom begins. When you no longer depend on others to act right for you to feel right, you become independent emotionally. Your peace is no longer fragile. It is no longer conditional. It becomes a constant, something you carry within you regardless of external circumstances. Understand this clearly. The world does not reward those who react. It rewards those who remain steady. In every environment, whether personal or professional, the person who maintains composure has the advantage. They think clearer, decide better, and lead stronger. So instead of investing your energy into controlling people, invest it into refining yourself. Strengthen your patience, sharpen your awareness, deepen your understanding. Because when you truly master yourself, you will realize something powerful. You no longer need to control anyone else. Most people believe that offense is something that happens to them automatically, as if it is an unavoidable reaction wired into their nature. But that belief is not only inaccurate, it is dangerous. Because the moment you think offense is automatic, you surrender your power to everyone around you. You begin to live at the mercy of other people's words, attitudes, and behaviors. And that is not strength, that is emotional dependency. The truth is, offense is always presented, but it is never imposed. It is an invitation, not a command. Someone may speak harshly to you, disrespect you, misunderstand you, or even try to provoke you, but none of these actions have the authority to control your internal state unless you grant them access. And that access is given through your agreement to be offended. Think about this carefully. Two people can experience the same situation, hear the same words, face the same insult, yet one walks away unbothered while the other carries anger for hours, days, or even years. The difference is not in what was said or done. The difference is in the decision each person made internally. One chose to absorb it, the other chose to release it. This means your emotional response is not controlled by external events, but by internal interpretation. What you tell yourself about what happened determines how you feel about it. If you interpret someone's behavior as a personal attack, you will feel offended. But if you interpret it as a reflection of their own limitations, their own immaturity, or their own lack of awareness, the emotional weight begins to disappear. You must come to a place where you refuse to internalize everything that is external. Not every comment deserves your attention. Not every opinion deserves your energy. Not every action deserves your reaction. Wisdom is knowing what to ignore. When you understand that offense is optional, you begin to operate from a position of control. You are no longer reacting instinctively, you are choosing deliberately. And this is where true emotional freedom begins. Because if you can choose not to be offended, then no one can manipulate your emotions. No one can push your buttons because you have removed the mechanism they rely on. It also requires humility and maturity to reach this level. Because sometimes the reason we get offended is not because of what was said, but because it touched something unresolved within us. Offense often reveals areas where we are insecure, defensive, or seeking validation. And instead of blaming others for triggering those feelings, a wise person uses those moments as opportunities for self-examination. Ask yourself, why did that bother me? Why did those words affect me so deeply? Is it truly about them, or is it about something within me that needs growth? When you begin to ask these questions, you shift from being a victim of your emotions to a student of your own behavior. Another powerful truth is this: when you choose offense, you carry a burden that the other person may not even be aware of. They move on, they continue their life, while you hold on to anger, replay conversations, and drain your own energy. In that sense, offense punishes you more than it affects them. So why carry what was never yours to begin with? You have the ability to filter what enters your spirit. You can hear something and decide it has no place within you. You can witness behavior and choose not to absorb it. This does not mean you accept disrespect or tolerate harmful actions. It means you respond with clarity instead of reacting with emotion. When you stop accepting offense, you become difficult to disturb. People may try to provoke you, but they will find no reaction to feed on. They may try to pull you into conflict, but you remain grounded. And over time, this consistency builds a reputation, not of weakness, but of unshakable strength. Because the person who cannot be easily offended cannot be easily controlled. And when you reach that level, you begin to experience a different kind of life. One where your peace is not dependent on others. Your emotions are not dictated by circumstances, and your energy is preserved for what truly matters. This is not about ignoring reality, it is about mastering it. It is about understanding that you always have a choice in how you respond, and choosing in a way that protects your peace, your clarity, and your purpose. Emotional discipline is one of the most misunderstood strengths a person can develop, because many people confuse it with suppression. They believe that to be emotionally disciplined means to ignore feelings, to bury reactions, or to pretend nothing affects them. But that is not discipline, that is avoidance, and avoidance always has consequences. True emotional discipline is not about denying what you feel. It is about understanding it, managing it, and choosing how it is expressed. Every emotion you experience carries energy. Anger, frustration, irritation, these are not inherently wrong. They are signals. They are internal messages alerting you to something that requires attention. However, the problem is not the emotion itself. The problem is what you do with it. Undisciplined emotions demand immediate expression. Disciplined emotions go through a process of evaluation before they are released. When you lack emotional discipline, you become reactive. Reaction is automatic. It is fast, unfiltered, and often regrettable. It gives control of your behavior to the situation or the person in front of you. But when you are emotionally disciplined, you shift from reaction to response. A response is intentional. It is measured. It is guided by principles rather than impulses. There is always a space between what happens to you and how you respond to it. Most people never develop the awareness to recognize that space, so they live as if their reactions are unavoidable. But that space is where your power exists. Emotional discipline is the ability to expand that space, to pause, to think, and to choose wisely instead of reacting blindly. Consider how often people say things they later regret simply because they allowed a moment of anger to control them. Words spoken in emotional haste cannot be taken back. Actions driven by uncontrolled feelings often create consequences that last far longer than the emotion itself. Emotional discipline protects you from becoming a prisoner of temporary feelings that can produce permanent damage. It also gives you clarity. When emotions are high, judgment becomes clouded. You begin to interpret situations through the lens of intensity rather than truths. You assume intentions, you exaggerate problems, and you make decisions that are not aligned with your long-term goals. But when you are emotionally disciplined, you create enough distance from the situation to see it accurately. You respond based on reality, not just perception. Another important aspect of emotional discipline is self-awareness. You must know your triggers. You must understand what disturbs your peace and why. Many people are controlled by patterns they have never examined. They react the same way in different situations with different people because they have never taken time to study themselves. Emotional discipline requires you to become a student of your own behavior. Once you are aware, you can begin to retrain your responses. You can decide in advance how you will handle certain situations. Instead of waiting to be overwhelmed, you prepare yourself mentally. You set internal standards for how you will behave, regardless of what others do. This is how you take back control of your emotional life. It is also important to understand that emotional discipline is not developed overnight. It is built through consistent practice. Every situation that challenges you becomes an opportunity to strengthen it. Each time you choose calm over anger, patience over irritation, and understanding over offense, you are reinforcing a new way of living. And over time, something powerful happens. You become less affected by external circumstances. Situations that once disturbed you lose their intensity. People who once provoked you no longer have that power. Not because they have changed, but because you have. This is where true freedom begins. When your emotions are no longer controlled by others, you are no longer easily manipulated. You become stable, grounded, and secure within yourself. You are able to maintain your peace in environments that would normally create chaos. Emotional discipline, therefore, is not a limitation. It is a form of liberation. It frees you from the need to react, from the burden of regret, and from the control of external influences. It allows you to operate from a place of strength, wisdom, and intention. And the more you develop it, the more you realize that the goal is not to feel less, but to feel without losing control. Not to eliminate emotions, but to master them. Because when you master your emotions, you ultimately master your life. Your peace is not something that comes from outside circumstances. It is something you generate, protect, and maintain from within. Most people are waiting for the world to become calm before they decide to be calm themselves. That is a losing strategy. If your peace depends on people behaving the way you expect, then your peace will always be unstable because people are unpredictable. But when you understand that your peace is your responsibility, everything changes. You stop negotiating your emotional state with others and you start governing it from within. Every time you say they made me angry or they ruined my mood, you are unknowingly giving away your authority. No one has that kind of power unless you hand it to them. What people do is present a stimulus, but your reaction is your decision. Between what happens to you and how you respond, there is a space, and in that space lies your power. If you do not take control of that space, Your emotions will always be at the mercy of external forces. You must train yourself to pause. Not every action deserves a reaction, and not every comment deserves your energy. The ability to remain unbothered is not a sign that you are ignoring reality. It is a sign that you have mastered your internal world. When you pause, you give yourself time to evaluate. Is this worth my peace? Is this situation important enough for me to lose my composure? Most of the time, the answer is no, but people react anyway because they have not developed emotional discipline. Protecting your peace requires intentional boundaries, not just with others, but with your own thoughts. Sometimes it is not even people disturbing you. It is the way you replay situations in your mind. You revisit conversations, imagine arguments, and create emotional reactions long after the moment has passed. That is self-inflicted disturbance. A disciplined mind knows how to let things go. It understands that holding on to negativity does not punish the other person. It only drains you. You must also accept that you cannot control how people treat you, but you can control what you tolerate and how you interpret it. When someone disrespects you, it reveals something about their character, not your worth. When someone misunderstands you, it reflects their perception, not your identity. Once you internalize this, you stop taking things personally. And when you stop taking things personally, you stop giving situations the power to disturb you. Peace is maintained through perspective. When you begin to see life from a higher level of understanding, small things lose their ability to affect you. What once triggered you now seems insignificant. What once angered you now becomes something you can overlook. This is growth. It is not that situations have changed. It is that you have changed. There is also strength in silence. You do not need to respond to everything to prove a point. Many battles are won by simply refusing to engage. When you argue with negativity, you give it energy. When you remain silent, you deny it influence. Silence is not weakness. It is controlled power. It is the decision to rise above unnecessary conflict. Taking responsibility for your peace also means choosing your environment wisely. If you constantly surround yourself with chaos, negativity, and drama, maintaining peace will be difficult. But when you intentionally place yourself in environments that promote clarity, growth, and stability, protecting your peace becomes natural. You are not meant to endure constant disturbance. You are meant to cultivate stability. At the highest level, peace becomes a lifestyle, not a reaction. It is no longer something you struggle to maintain. It becomes your default state. You walk into situations already grounded. You face challenges already centered. And because of that, nothing easily moves you. When you truly understand that your peace is your responsibility, you stop blaming others for how you feel. You stop expecting the world to adjust itself for your comfort. Instead, you rise to a level where your inner stability is independent of external conditions. And that is where real freedom begins. When your peace is no longer something that can be taken, but something that is firmly established within you. People do not act randomly. They act from what they know, what they have experienced, and what they have become. Every word they speak and every action they take is a reflection of their internal world. When someone disrespects you, misunderstands you, or behaves in a way that seems irrational, it is easy to assume that their behavior is about you. But in reality, it is often a revelation of their level of awareness, not a definition of your worth. A person who has never learned emotional control will express frustration through anger. A person who has been hurt deeply but never healed may project that pain onto others. Someone who lacks understanding will often misinterpret intentions, react prematurely, and create conflict where none was intended. When you begin to see this clearly, you stop personalizing behavior that was never truly personal in the first place. This perspective changes everything. Instead of reacting with anger, you begin to respond with understanding. Not because you excuse poor behavior, but because you recognize its source. You understand that expecting maturity from someone who has not developed it is like expecting clarity from someone standing in darkness. They are not withholding it from you. They simply do not possess it yet. This realization protects your peace. Because once you understand that people can only give what they have, you stop demanding from them what they are incapable of providing. You no longer look for deep respect from someone who has never learned to respect themselves. You stop seeking calm communication from someone who has never practiced self-control. And in doing so, you free yourself from constant disappointment. It also shifts your reactions. Instead of becoming offended, you become observant. Instead of escalating situations, you create space. You realize that reacting emotionally to someone's limitations only pulls you down to the same level of confusion they are operating from. But maintaining your composure elevates you above the situation. This does not mean you tolerate everything. Understanding someone's level of awareness does not mean you accept harmful behavior. It means you respond wisely instead of reacting emotionally. You set boundaries without anger. You walk away without bitterness. You protect your peace without needing to prove a point. There is a difference between being affected by people and being aware of them. Awareness allows you to see clearly without losing yourself. It allows you to engage when necessary and disengage when appropriate. It keeps you grounded in your identity rather than being pulled into someone else's instability. When you live with this understanding, you develop patience, not passive patience, but intelligent patience. You give people room to grow without allowing them to control your emotional state. You become selective with your energy, investing it only where there is mutual respect and understanding. Ultimately, this awareness leads to emotional freedom. Because the truth is, many conflicts are sustained not by what others do, but by how deeply we internalize their actions. When you stop internalizing what does not belong to you, you stop carrying burdens that were never yours to begin with. And when you reach that point, you no longer feel the need to react to everything. You no longer feel threatened by every opinion or disturbed by every action. You see people for who they are, you understand where they are, and you choose your response accordingly. That is the power of awareness. It transforms frustration into clarity, reaction into control, and conflict into calm. Silence is often misunderstood as weakness, but in reality, it is one of the highest forms of strength a person can develop. The individual who has learned when not to speak has tapped into a level of wisdom that most people overlook. You see, not every situation requires your response, and not every opinion deserves your energy. When you begin to understand this, you stop reacting out of impulse and start operating from intention. Many people feel the need to defend themselves constantly, to explain their position, to prove their worth, or to correct every misunderstanding. But what they fail to realize is that excessive reaction often diminishes their authority. The more you try to control how others perceive you, the more you place your value in their hands. Wisdom, however, teaches you that your value is not determined by external validation, but by internal conviction. There is power in restraint. When someone provokes you and you choose silence, you are not losing, you are demonstrating control. You are showing that your emotions are not easily manipulated. Anyone can react, anyone can argue, anyone can raise their voice. But it takes a disciplined mind to remain calm, to observe, and to decide whether a response is even necessary. You must understand that words are tools, and like any tool, they can either build or destroy. Speaking without thinking often leads to regret, broken relationships, and unnecessary conflict. But when you master silence, your words become more intentional, more impactful, and more respected. People begin to listen, not because you speak often, but because when you do, it carries weight. Wisdom also teaches you the importance of timing. It is not just about what you say, but when you say it. A wise person knows that even the right words spoken at the wrong time can create the wrong outcome. This is why patience becomes a critical part of emotional discipline. You learn to wait, to assess, to understand the full picture before responding. And in many cases, you discover that what seemed important in the moment loses its significance with time. Another dimension of silence is observation. When you are not busy reacting, you are able to see clearly. You begin to notice patterns in people's behavior, the motives behind their words, and the intentions behind their actions. This awareness gives you an advantage because you are no longer caught in the chaos. You are studying it. And when you understand something, you are less likely to be controlled by it. There are moments when people will try to pull you into unnecessary arguments, drama, or emotional turbulence. They may expect a reaction from you because that is what they are used to. But when you refuse to engage, when you remain grounded and unshaken, you disrupt that expectation. Your silence becomes a boundary, a clear message that you will not participate in anything that disturbs your peace. This does not mean you never speak. It means you speak with purpose. It means your words are chosen, not triggered. It means you are no longer a prisoner of the moment, but a master of your response. There is a difference between being silent out of fear and being silent out of strength. Fearful silence avoids confrontation, but powerful silence controls it. When you develop this level of wisdom, you begin to experience a different kind of freedom. You are no longer burdened by the need to react to everything. You are no longer drained by every opinion, every comment, or every situation. Instead, you conserve your energy for what truly matters. You become selective, intentional, and focused. And in that state, something remarkable happens. People begin to respect you differently. They may not always understand you, but they recognize that you are not easily moved. Your calmness in situations that would normally create chaos becomes your signature. It sets you apart. Ultimately, silence and wisdom work together to protect your peace. They allow you to navigate life with clarity instead of confusion, with strength instead of impulsiveness. When you reach this level, you are no longer reacting to life. You are directing it.